Welcome in, everyone. I am Donato. It is, even my guest doesn't even know this, but this is the first official podcast. We'll do some editing, we'll get better. That's probably the part where I'll have some audience noise. They'll do some clapping. We'll get to that. So we're starting it off with this is this is the guy that you want on your team. You heard of a wingman, but if you got a cage fighter, you got an MMA fighter, you got somebody in the grappling arts disciplines, yeah, that's the friend you call, that's the guy you hang out with. You just don't let him know that's the reason. You make him feel like he's the coolest guy ever, but secretly you're walking through the club, you're nudging everybody, you're giving them the stare because you know who you got. Let me tell you who I got. I got James Quigg. James, how are you doing today?
I'm doing quite well, Donato. How are you? Thanks for having me. I was not prepared to be the one who you let finish the fights that you started. Why you got to do me like that?
James, we're going to get into getting to know you, but while we're there, how many fights would you have to bail me out of before you start to say, you know what, I'm starting to get a little too much bruising on the knuckles. I'm gonna have to pump the brakes with Donato. Like how many would be too many?
I mean, it's just got to be the pattern of behavior. If I notice that you're the one starting the fights, Donato, then
Yeah.
I'm gonna be like, hey man, look, we gotta address some things. We gotta manage the way that you're managing your emotions because I can't keep solving these problems for you. Now, if the pattern goes a different way and like people are starting fights with you and you're not backing down and then you can't handle what you get into, that's a different conversation to have.
Yeah. So, James, let's just go back to that because there's so many layers to this, and we're gonna get to some other items. Okay, so James, do you have a degree in psychology?
No, I have
Okay.
a bachelor's of science in Arabic language.
Oh my gosh. So he can not only kick our butts, but he's smarter than the rest of us too. Geez, was not ready for that. Was not ready for that. Okay, so since you don't have a degree in psychology, I'm 5'6", but I don't think I have the short guy syndrome, if that even matters. Maybe for guys shorter than me. I don't know where to start. But what if I have the my buddy's James Quigg syndrome? Now, hear me out. Just hear me out. It's a bravado. It's the fact that I'm just really proud of you. And I want to see you work. If you got a friend that's a chef, you want them to cook. If I got a friend that can choke people out, I
I
want him
mean,
to do that.
look, Donato, I got you, right? You
Okay, all
just
right.
go to YouTube, you search my name, James Quigg MMA,
Yeah.
or you come to the gym where I'm training and you train with me, and you can see that whenever you want.
Hey, I lost you there. I was going through a tunnel. It sounded like you were saying, like you're inviting me to come work out with you. Squeaky, squeaky. I, I'm a pretty boy. I'm a lover. I ain't a fighter. I'm gonna leave that to you though. All right. So let's go back. You threw me off there. Arabic language. I don't even know if I can spell that. I'm not gonna embarrass myself. Why'd you pick that? It seems like when I think Japanese, Chinese, Arabic language, those are like the hardest. Russian, those are like the hardest things in the world. You already, I'm sure, were in the grappling arts. Why do you need to challenge yourself even more?
Well, so what happened was
Yeah, it's gonna be a
what
good
I was at West Point, United States Military Academy, class of 10, and I was getting ready to pick my major and thought to myself, who do I want to be when I grow up? What do I want to do when I grow up? Especially since I'm at the military academy, which, if for those folks listening who don't know, that means that unless I screw up exactly the right amount
Yeah.
to where I both get to graduate and also can't commission, I'm going to commission as a second lieutenant in the United States Army. That's what happened. So in my mind, hey, what I major in doesn't have a huge correlation to what I'm going to be doing after I graduate. So I want to major and focus in my studies on the thing that's going to bring me the most joy and the thing that's going to lead to what I want to do if the Army turns out not to be for me. Like, I was not one of those folks who went into this like, oh, my parents were in the military. Everybody I knew was in the military. I know I'm going to serve and I want to make a career out of it. I was like, my mom was a social worker. My dad was a photojournalist. Like, I didn't fully internalize that my grandparents had served until much, much later. That was not a big part of my lifestyle. So I was just like, well, hey, this school seems like a fun thing, seems like a great opportunity, great way to get my college paid for. And I'll find out whether or not this thing is for me. And so I was looking around and I was like, hey, who do I want to be Uncle Iroh or Mr. Miyagi. So how do I do that? Well, let me do exercise science. And they're like, well, best we got is kinesthesiology. I'm like, that seems like a little bit rigorous for me. I said, okay, well then how about education? And they're like, we straight up don't have that. We don't got you, bro. So I was
swing and a miss.
So then I was like, all right, well, maybe some of that Eastern philosophy, Taoism, Buddhism, focus on that. They're like, hey, look, so we have 7 different classes on Immanuel Kant, and we have one single class called Eastern Thought that covers everything from Hinduism to Buddhism to Taoism to Confucianism, all of it. I'm like, one semester? You're covering all of that in one semester, and that's it. But you have like a different class for every book that Kant wrote.
Oh.
Great. Okay. So what class am I enjoying the most? Well, I had gotten put in Arabic class and I was like, this is a great time. I'm having fun with this. So I guess I'll just major in that. And it worked out. I did pretty well, maintained my like 3.01 GPA, got to go do a semester abroad in Jordan. Got to see more of the world than my small town from the middle of nowhere, Illinois, but ever thought I'd get to see.
Wow. I'm impressed. You know, when you think of Arabic, I get a headache because I know it's hard. I'm gonna say here, you say Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
There it is. That's about all I got. Oh, wait. Perban?
I'm not. I have to acknowledge I came back from my semester abroad in 2009 and then proceeded to basically not use it. So I can say like تدرس اللغة العربية في جامعة الأردنية لأربع شهور, and that's not great. But that's mostly saying, hey, I studied the Arabic language for 4 months in the University of Jordan.
Wow. Okay. I think I did it wrong. Merban? Does that sound better?
I'm not sure what you're trying to say.
I may not know what I'm trying to say. I thought it was hello. Google Translate.
Well, that's one of the other challenges, right? Because you have your modern standard Arabic that's like the broadcast language and the print language, and that's not really what anyone speaks.
Yeah. I could see that. All right. So you said you grew up in Illinois. Before we get into a little bit of that, do you get upset when people say Illinois?
It depends. I get upset if I point out, hey, it's actually pronounced Illinois, and then you look me straight in the eye and say, I know how to pronounce the place that you're from better than you do. And I realized I did it a little bit as a kid too. I was like, no person from West Virginia, from North Carolina, from whatever, it's Appalachia. And they're like, I live in Appalachia. We're here. We live here. This is where we're from. It's Appalachia.
Yeah.
So I've changed my tune on that. Like, maybe I listen to the people who live on the land when they tell me how you're supposed to say what that land is.
Then that's fair. I've gone to Chicago a ton. I can't even tell you the last time I went to Chicago and I had to pay for a hotel room. Shout out to my Chicago peeps. For our listeners, we'll get some of them on. They are very interesting. So just excuse my geographical ignorance here, but I got to do. It's the number 4 largest city in America. Used to be number 3. Houston jumped it. Don't know if you know that. How far are you from Chicago?
I'm about 120 miles straight west.
Well, that's pretty close.
It's a 2-hour drive. I am closer to Iowa and Wisconsin than I am to Chicago.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Because so this is where I want to go. You have a wrestling background. So where did that start?
Oh, that started in Illinois. I was in elementary school, and my best friend I was like, hey, let's hang out. He's like, I can't. I was like, well, let's hang out a different night. He's like, well, I can't. I was like, what's going on? Oh, I'm going to wrestling practice. So I turn around, I go to my parents. I'm like, Mom, Dad, I want to start wrestling. And so I did. And then I kind of didn't stop. So I started when I was 8 years old, wrestled all through middle school and high school. I won state in middle school. I qualified for USA Wrestling Nationals I think it was in 2003 and then in 2004 in some small world stuff or some is this a podcast where I can curse?
It certainly is.
Okay. So in their experiences that taught me there's levels to this shit. Yeah. I qualified for nationals. I went out there. I won a couple matches, and then I encountered this dude from Pennsylvania. He tossed me for five. Match is done. I'm out after like 20, 30 seconds. I was like, man, there's levels to this stuff. And then he went up in the finals against this kid who turned out no one had scored a point on him this whole tournament. And then he goes out, and this dude who just trashed me like it wasn't anything gets tossed for five, and he's done. That dude who went through that tournament getting no points scored on him was Henry Cejudo.
Oh. I know that name.
Yes. Wow. Who would eventually go on to win the Beijing Olympics in wrestling and would become a UFC champion in 2 different weight classes. There was levels to this.
Eee.
So Cejudo's was up here, and I was kind of like edging onto this level.
Okay, let's go back to how we started this. How offended would you be if I dumped you as the wingman that I loved, and then, maybe ended up as Henry Cejudo's homeboy, and then like all the places I used to take you, I don't take you anymore and I take him. Like, would you be mad and you choke me out the next time you see me, or would we still be kind of cool?
It would be more one of those things of I'd be like, okay, but how though? Like, how'd you meet this dude? Can I train with him? Like, you can go out, do whatever, as long as like I can go to the gym and get that work and do some learning and getting better my own self.
Well, okay, you're right. Because you and I had history. All those times you bailed me out. You're right. I should bring you along and hook a brother up, get you in there.
I don't have to stay in the clubs. That's not where I'm getting my good times anyway. I'd rather be in the gym.
Yeah. It's the least I could do for our history.
There you go.
So this is where I was wondering. So you're in the state of Illinois. You're closer to Iowa. I want to come back to that. But you've got the 4th largest city in America. I'm gonna dole out a bunch of stereotypes here. Big city, I'm gonna say all them city boys probably aren't into wrestling because there's some cultural things. You've heard a lot of that. People are like, they call it thongs, they call it wrestling around with another dude. They make it sound homophobic. I mean, let's just be honest. But then it's just the population. So there's gonna be some studly dudes, some just crazy athletic dudes. Like, how hard is it to wrestle in Illinois proper because of Chicago?
I mean, you definitely have that process of like when folks have a certain amount of wealth and they have someone in their family who demonstrates a certain amount of proficiency at something, they'll relocate, right? And there was definitely a school that I believe there was definitely a school or a program that I believe was somewhere in the Chicago suburbs where people would move and they'd recruit from other states to try and pull families from their area to be the big deal school in Illinois for wrestling. And I was not a part of that school, but my town, Sterling was weird. In Illinois, most sports that aren't football you just have single A and double A. And Sterling is just over that double A line, and the town across the river that's only a little bit smaller is below the single A line. So like we're just on that side of being the larger school. But we consistently punch outside our weight class. Like we would have our football team would get pushed up to the biggest to compete with the biggest schools coming out of Chicago, the highest population schools. We'd have to compete against them. We had a kid on the swim team who was crushing state records and was like verging on Olympic qualifying times in the pool while he was in high school. We had like a 4-time state champion high jumper. Our band was always sending kids to the state like music competition. It's just like what I look back on it, especially after between my sophomore and junior year, we moved to California to a much, much larger community, a population of around the broader community. Hesperia, Victorville, Apple Valley had about 300,000 people in it. So I'm coming from this town of like 15,000 people right across the river from a town of 12,000 people. And I'm like, why is the band at this school where my graduating class is the same size as my entire school population? Why is this band smaller and not as good? Why isn't the wrestling? And so it's just like, man, something about that community seems to have crossed over that threshold of like, once you get a certain level of excellence, you create this expectation of excellence. And so this tiny community keeps churning out those above average outcomes where you're like,
shout out to Sterling, Illinois. The swimmer, was this guy hanging out in the Rock River? Like that's just
I really could not. I don't know what was in James White's food, but it was next level. He was crushing things.
And the terrain is mostly flat in Sterling. So where's the high jumper? What's he jumping over?
Man, I don't know. I just know that she trained hard, and she went out there and she kept winning.
Incredible. 15,000 people. That's incredible. The hardware capital of the world. Sterling, Illinois.
When Northwest Steel and Wire was still a thing.
Very cool. So you were over there closer to Iowa. Now, this is what I know, sir. They're serious about their wrestling in Iowa. And you being that close, I'm going to say your parents, your coaches took you to some tournaments just because it's close. The proximity is right there. So what was it like stepping up with those Iowa boys growing up?
I mean, for me, I was always just like, I'm going to wrestle whoever they put in front of me. And I'd listen to people, they'd be like, oh, he's ranked this, oh, he's ranked that. And I'm like, I mean, what he's ranked is not going to change what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to take him down. I'm going to do my best to take him down. If I can't take him down, I'm going to pick top. I'm going to leg ride him. I'm going to break his will until he either lets me get back points or lets me pin him to stop me from hurting him. I think you can kind of see where the transition to submission grappling and MMA like starts making a lot of sense.
I see that. So, a little curious. You said that, and I didn't say it earlier. Thank you for your service. I do not take it for granted. People like you that serve to help us, and then you went to the big dog United States Military Academy. So pretty awesome. You guys have to go to basic training.
So
is that
sort of? At the military academy, we have what is dubbed Beast Barracks. It is basic training but it's run by other cadets. So we get kind of that overlap of here is Army stupid stuff. Here is college stupid stuff. And what happens when Army stupid stuff is done by college age kids. Especially when you think about, I went to, like, we had a lot of stuff that's like frat adjacent because we're all living on post. There's not a cadet who doesn't have to live in the barracks. We're broken out into organizations, Alpha Company, A1, A2, A3, A4, based on which regiment you're in. And so and then you have the cadets that are in charge and you break down. So they do a lot of like, you're in college, you're also in the Army, but we're having people run things like they're the Army without ever having, in most cases, been in the Army themselves. So they're just basing it off of what little bit they've seen.
Yes.
What I think the biggest thing, though, that always got me was like people at West Point would be like, oh, this is just silly and stupid because we're at West Point, and once we're in the real Army, it'll be different. And then we'd go out and you get to basic officer leadership course, BOLIC, and they'll be like, oh, look, it's just dumb like this because it's TRADOC. It's not the real Army. Once you get to the real Army, then it'll be. And then you get to the real Army, and people are like, oh, it's just dumb because this is conventional Army. When you get to the special operations side, that's when it'll. And I'm just like, I'm beginning to think that there's no true Scotsman. Like, it's just been the Scotsman the whole time. Like, this dumb stuff is just part of being in the organization.
Yeah. Pretty cool. I bet they were pretty excited when they said that, oh, this guy speaks Arabic. Let's get our hands on this guy.
I mean, they're the ones who set me up to go Arabic. You do a thing called the Defense Language Proficiency Test that checks, that is not a like, what languages do you know? It's how well do you grasp concepts of language? What is your like predilection for learning languages? And then at the time they had 7 languages: English, French, Spanish, German, Russian, Arabic, and Chinese. That might be 8. I forget exactly what they were. I just know that I tested at the level where it was like, okay, so we're going to put you in Arabic, Russian, or Chinese. And I had opted for Arabic because I was like, well, it's 2006, the surge in Iraq. I'll probably need this.
Sure.
And then they sent me to Afghanistan, where not a lot of people speak Arabic.
Yeah. That was.
Whoops. Oh, well.
Let's get to the second part. You decide to go into the military. I'm a little curious. Was it family that pushed you? Like, it's got to be something that someone kind of pushed you to, right? Or you grew up like saying, this is what I want to do.
Are you ready for the next what happened was,
Oh, yes. I live for those, actually. It
so
makes for a good podcast.
what happened was,
Yeah.
I had taken the PSAT, the prep SAT,
Yeah.
and like you do when you release things, they were like, "Hey, who do you want us to send the scores to?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know what most of these schools are, but like military, that seems kind of cool. A military academy, that seems different. Hey, over here, there's this one." I'm just like, I've heard of these schools. This seems cool. And so I start getting stuff. Tulane sent me a lot of stuff. The Naval Academy, the Army sent me stuff, and so I'm opening up these pamphlets and I'm looking through them, trying to figure out in like August, September of my senior year, like where do I even? I know I want to go to college, but where do I even want to go? Why do I want? And I'm looking through, and West Point's like, hey, so we're looking for people in the smart classes. Like, well, I'm in every AP class I can fit into my schedule. Just we're looking for people who are athletes. Hey, I have 4 varsity letters. I do all kinds of sports. And we're looking for people who are in activities. Like, oh, I not only am I in those things, I'm active in my youth group. I'm part of the band. So I've done all this stuff, and we'll let you shoot rifles, and like you'll do military training and shoot rifles in the summer. And I'm like, yo, I tried to get my mom to let me take a rifle safety course, and she wouldn't let me do that. But if I go here, I'll definitely be able to shoot things, and I'll be able to do Army stuff. And that seems really cool, because I don't know about you, but I always wanted to grow up to be like an action hero protagonist.
Yeah. 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 Yep. I was a
So
comic book guy. There were insert G.I. Joe also was a thing for me. So yeah, I could have been any of those guys. But you got to kind of be in the military to be G.I. Joe, right?
Right. You got to like go in that. It's like, how am I going to get these cool action hero skills? Well, these folks just said they give me those skills. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And so I started that process of applying to my congressman. Our representative was Jerry Lewis, not that Jerry Lewis.
Oh, what a name, though.
Right? And then the senators of Feinstein, and I forget Feinstein and Pelosi. I forget who it was at the time, because I think Pelosi's not in the Senate.
I know those names. Maybe it's because it's Illinois.
Yeah, well, those were California names. I was in California at the time for that.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to get these 3 possible people to nominate me, who had only been in their state for a little over a year, to go to West Point. And any given representative can only have, I think, 4 or 8 candidates who they've appointed at a time.
Wow.
But in the smallest of small world stuff, the folks who were interviewing me on behalf of Congressman Lewis, like one of them had just driven through Illinois. One of them was also a trumpet player, and I was coming from a marching band thing. It was just one of those, it seems like this is meant to be. Like, things that shouldn't be happening, events are conspiring to make this happen. And it was also one of those things where my parents had sat me down when I was younger, but old enough to kind of understand the conversation they were having, and been like, look, we love you, and we have tried to put aside what we could for you, but we have not put aside enough for us to be able to pay for you to go to college. We also know that you're smart and you're a good athlete, so you're going to have to do the extra work of getting the scholarships and getting those top grades. And finding out that you don't actually need a scholarship to go to West Point, because if you get in, it's paid for. You like, I had a one-time fee that was like buying my laptop computer and some of the supplies. And then I spent 4 years getting paid to go to school and legally obliged not to have another job outside of going to school.
Cool. I kind of want to I'm going to come back to that school. I'm a little curious. Living in Illinois, all I can think of is cold weather. And I went there those times I told you I went to Chicago. A bunch of times it was in the winter. I know, but what can you do? I went. And also I knew I was gonna be able to couch surf. But then you moved to California. So now I don't really know who you are. Are you in another stereotype because they're fun and I want a good podcast? Are you surfer boy Quig? Are you snow dude Chicago Quig? Like, what are you? Where's your affinity there? Because I'm thinking hot weather Quig and I'm thinking cold weather Quig. Which one? Where do you fall?
I mean, I'm in Atlanta now. The Army sent me to North Carolina, and I haven't left the South.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I just moved. I moved deeper into the South over
Yes,
time.
you did.
But
Wow.
ultimately, I will say, I think, especially outlook-wise, I'm still very much a kid from the Midwest. I grew up in Illinois for 16 years. I
Yeah.
lived in California for 2 years.
Okay. Okay.
Now, that being said, also the part of California I was in was not the surfer part. We had a whole mountain range between us. I was in that like 2,000 feet above sea level desert that you have to drive through as the last blip of like something resembling civilization between LA and Las Vegas.
Vegas. Sounds like you might have had a lot of trips to Vegas then. How far was it to Vegas from your house?
About 3 hours.
Hey. It sounds like in high school, senior skip day, you might have lost your car or your mom's favorite watch or your dad's pocket watch he inherited. We gonna get any juicy Las Vegas stories?
Oh no. Our senior skip day, we went towards the beach instead of towards Vegas.
Yeah. All right. Maybe you went to Venice Beach and you pumped some iron. That's what I'm gonna think you did.
Venice, Long Beach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to come back to this. So while you were at West Point, hey man, the number 1 city in America, and you did live close to the number 4. How many times you go to New York City, and what's your opinion of New York City?
So there's a certain, when you get enough people who live in the same place for long enough, there is a vibe, there is an aliveness there, a vibrancy. Chicago has a feel. It's Chicago. You know it's Chicago as soon as you're there. New York, the same way. Atlanta has that. Savannah, well, I haven't been to Savannah. Charleston had it. I don't know if I just didn't go to the right parts of LA or if just the nature of the desert, it doesn't have the same thing.
Yeah.
And so New York is one of those places that people like, for our culture, for the American mainstream culture, that's been one of the most populated places for the longest in America. Yeah. And you can kind of feel that that inertia of human lives building up over time.
Yes.
And so there's that life to it.
Man, I know you said your mom was a social worker. Maybe you should have studied sociology. That was a great explanation. Inertia, like that was awesome, dude. Like,
I mean, I
like that.
It's one of those things that I didn't fully grasp until I went to Jordan. And we spent, we had a like 16, 20-hour layover in Germany. So we hopped out in, I think it was Frankfurt, either Frankfurt or Munich. I forget now. Man, why has it got to be 14 years ago? Why has time got to do me like that?
I hate it.
But
because I'm loving life.
Yeah. And so that was a city where I was like, okay, I've been places in the US that have some, but they don't got weight like this. And then I go to older places. Fine. Turns out if you didn't know, the Roman name of the city when the Romans occupied Jordan, Amman was called Philadelphia. So our Philadelphia is actually named after the city, what the Romans called the city of Amman in Jordan.
What?
Yep.
Did not know that.
I didn't know that till I got there, so I'm not going to be mad at you. And so I went in those places. I got the opportunity while I was there to travel and go to Cairo and go to Luxor and go to places where humans have been living, and that inertia has been built up over millennia rather than centuries. And it's a different scale.
Yeah.
You know, I think we went and we did a trip. We went out in Wadi Rum, the Valley of the Moon, that is it's a desert in Jordan that's adjacent to where like Al-Betra is. And you just stand out there and you see some of these rock edifices and the desert and the moonlights over top of it and the stars. And you're like, okay, I get where the reverence comes from. I get why like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all came out of this space.
Yeah.
Oof.
All right. You mentioned something earlier. Bro, you already can tap people out in like 15 seconds, I'm sure, the average guy, if he's stupid enough to let you get your hands on him. I'm hoping you have like no boxing skills, because if you can do that and you can put your hands on us and then put us to sleep, like it's the worst. But you said you had 4 varsity letters. Come on, bro. You just can't let that slide under. Run it. What sports did you do?
When I first started wrestling, I used to say, "Oh, wrestling is what I'm best at, but baseball is my favorite sport." So I played Little League baseball. That's the only sport that I did at high school that I didn't get a varsity letter for. I got a little JV letter. But I did that. I did soccer. And then in Illinois, I did soccer, and then I did wrestling, and then I did baseball. And then I moved to California, and it turns out, soccer is a winter sport in California.
Yeah.
There's things you can do when you don't have real winters. It's like, well, I'm not going to give up wrestling to do soccer. Are you crazy? So I went back to cross country, which I had done in middle school. And then swimming in Illinois had been a winter sport, so I didn't get to swim because I was wrestling. Well, in California, swimming was a spring sport. So I could come out of wrestling and then I could hop in the pool and I could swim. So my last 2 years, what I love to say is like, hey, so I wrestle and then I swim so I can stay in shape for wrestling. And then I'll do summer wrestling, AAU or USA wrestling or whatever. And then I'll do cross country to stay in shape for wrestling. And then I'll wrestle and I'll win. Yeah. That's just how I do it. Unless I'm, going at that like national, international level of stuff. And then things are different.
All right. You also said band. And you did come back later and you said trumpet. So like you are only a trumpet guy? Because I feel like a trumpet guy might be able to play the tuba, maybe the trombone, or is it only the trumpet for you?
So I only practice the trumpet. The principles of making an embouchure and getting the sound out of the instrument are the same, but I can't read bass clef, and I never practiced them. I was doing too many different things to do the like polymath of let me learn to play all of the instruments. Like I'm getting my 30, 45 minutes in on this instrument and I'm winning my spot on first chair, but I'm not going to learn all these other things. It hasn't been until the last year or so that I started learning to play guitar.
The stereotypes are fun in life if you embrace them. I mean, I use it as humor in my life. I know they have a lot of negative connotations, but people who know me, of course, listening to this podcast, know I love to live in them. Bruh, you're supposed to be a band nerd, geek. I'm supposed to be able to stuff you in a locker. that you ain't the one to pick on. That's not fair.
I mean, I had it like on two levels, right? Not only was I in band and the honors classes, I also, my freshman year in high school, I was 95 pounds, 98 if I ate a big sandwich. And at that time, even at that time, the smallest weight class for varsity wrestling in the state of Illinois was 103 pounds.
Lightweight.
So I was not even big enough.
Yeah.
Like I lost out on the varsity spot purely to size.
Yeah.
But kids who thought they were going to pick, like one of the kids on the soccer team thought he was going to play a fun prank and pick me up and put me in a trash can. And he had forgotten that 2 years prior, when we were both in middle school, he had outweighed me by 50 pounds then, and I had still wiped the mat with him. So when he was 50 pounds bigger than me, and we were both about 30 pounds heavier than we had been when we wrestled in middle school, it still didn't stop me from double legging him into a brick wall, knocking the wind out of him, and let him like wheeze and catch his breath again, and watch the other kids on the soccer field decide they didn't want to try and pick me up and put me in a locker.
No thanks.
I even had that happen a couple times on the soccer field. I was the second smallest kid on the soccer team, but at least on the JV side of things, I would play goalie sometimes because I liked being goal. I liked having the thing to do. And some of the larger JV fresh soft kids would be like, oh, he's just a little guy. We can just run him over. And it's like, well, if I'm bending down to scoop up a ball, it's not that different from double legging. And then and if they're in my goal box, if I stand up through them and flip them over top of me, this is not a foul. It's not that kid got flipped over and he looked over at the ref like, what? And the ref was like, you tried to run over a goalie picking up a ball. Why? Absolute. Yeah. So then no one went in my like little goalie section for the rest of that game.
Lessons. These are lessons in life. We all have to, they learned them. I hate bullies. And so anyone that wants to be a bully and stuff a band person, and look, hopefully you hear this podcast before you go and do something like that, because you can't judge a book by its cover. All right. So trumpet, that means you were a jazz guy. Like, did you or even still have like an affinity for jazz? Sorry, that's really all I could think of when I think of like a trumpet player.
So you're going to get my third what happened of the night.
Hey, bring it on.
So what happened was I walked into the music selection thing dead set. I knew, without a doubt, I was going to go in there. I was going to get a violin. I was going to learn to play violin. I was going to learn how to fiddle. And I was going to do wild Devil Went Down to Georgia stuff on the fiddle. That's what I knew in my little fourth grade heart. That's how it's going to be. And I walk in there and I'm like, well, while I'm here, I might as well fuck around with other instruments, see what's going on. And here I am. But at that point, I was maybe 40 pounds. And I'm like, well, let me fool around with this tuba. And the band director is over at the high school band director is like, that small person just got that big sound out of the big old instrument. We need this kid on some kind of brass or wind instrument. Like if he's got these dummy lungs, we got to put them to use.
That's true.
And he's talking to me and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do the violin. I'm going to learn how to fiddle. And he's like, well, let me just show you something and see what you think. And he picks up a trumpet and he picks up a plunger mute and he starts running it on a Louis Armstrong style wah, 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 trumpet solo. And I just make jazz music my whole personality until I like start listening to hard rock and new metal in middle school to pump me up for wrestling season. But all the rest of the time, if it wasn't jazz or blues, I didn't want to care. I didn't want to hear about it. It's like Louis Armstrong, Louis Prima,
Uh-huh.
Bix Beiderbecke, Benny Goodman, Dizzy Gillespie, Miles Davis. These people became my whole personality.
Where do you go? Where do you fall when it comes to Latin jazz? I love Latin jazz. Herb Alpert, the French horns. Herb Alpert and his horns. Like, did that ever kind of grab any of your attention?
So
Tijuana Brass. That was the name.
My dad had at some point randomly rented a copy of the Buena Vista Social Club documentary. And I was like, oh, Cuban jazz. Yes. Yes, please. Yes, more. And if you look it up, you can find them on Spotify still. The Buena Vista Social Club album. It is incredible. Dos Gardenias para ti, Chan Chan, just great music.
I'm gonna look that one up. That sounds like it's right down my alley. Look forward to that. All right, so you're a trumpet guy. I'm still gonna ask. Did anybody try to get you into a band? I mean, the Roots came out and all that stuff was live. Like, did anybody try? Were you ever in a band? Like a a social band, not a school band.
I was not ever in a social band.
Okay.
Some of it was I just didn't have time. It turns out when you're in a bunch of AP classes and you're active in clubs and you're in the band and you're in sports, you run out of time. In some ways it's like, oh, look, I don't have any time to recognize that I have like maybe 1.5 friends outside of these activities. So let me not like dwell on that, but may or may not have been a coping mechanism. We can let my therapist decide.
I won't dabble into those lanes. I told you I don't have the psychology degree, and probably don't even have the patience to be a therapist because I don't know. I'm always up, so I might not be able to relate. And I'd be a crappy therapist. All right. Well, since no one's ever asked you, here it is, bud. You want to be in a band? We could start one in my garage. I live in Austin, Texas.
I mean, that's a bit of a commute from north of Atlanta, Georgia.
All right, that sounds like a no.
For now. We end up in a different space. We end up where I can actually get over to your garage. We can start negotiating.
The name, though. I mean, here's the name. I know it sounds like a no, but I think we should be called the A team. I'm in Austin, you're in Atlanta. All right. So let's go back. You said that you were kind of excited about the opportunity to do some shooting earlier when we were talking about you, military service, your training. This is, again, I know 120 miles from Chicago, but bruh, you Chicago. Did you ever turn your rifle to the side and shoot? Because that just feels like what a Chicago dude would do. So I feel like that's what you were doing.
Like, not the rifle for darn sure. You can't you turn it on the side, you can't get a good sight picture. I can't like both be over here and have a good sight picture. Even if you can, I'm not that high speed. I'm basic proficiency. I made my qualification. Yes. I think I might have shot expert like 2 or 3 times, and it sounds really cool.
Yeah.
It's a base level of proficiency.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am teaching you why you should not live in stereotypes. I do. And it's all about the humor for me, but yeah, he is correct. You would not want to do that with the rifle. All right, so let's get to some other things. This has been a crappy podcast. I got this guy coming on. He's a brawler. And so here's my question I wrote down here. Why are you a smart, tough guy? Because you're freaking ruining it. You're supposed to be able to barely put together sentences. I was going to make fun of you the entire time because you're in Atlanta. I'm in Austin. You can't get me, at least not tonight. But come on, man.
I might catch a flight.
All right.
Look, the rhyme was there. I couldn't leave it.
No, you're right. The fear. I don't know what my lighting looks like, but it turned white for a second there. All the blood rushed out of the body. And I was like, oh, because
I couldn't tell. That melanin held you down.
Yeah. Oh, man. Oh, all right. You're not coming, right? Like I haven't said anything to piss you off.
No, okay, we're good.
Okay, all right, good. All right. So let's talk about it. That shirt looks pretty awesome. I know some people are going to be listening. For those who are going to see us on YouTube, the Gentleman Brawler, it says it's got a derby cap, and someone is doing a tip of the cap. This podcast will be called A Talk with a Gentleman Brawler. Sir, what is a Gentleman Brawler?
Well, so one of the things that they say about students at West Point is you're both a gentleman and a scholar. Yeah. And I was like, well, I'm not so much of a scholar anymore. I'm not doing a lot of reading or studying. So I guess that makes me a gentleman and a brawler.
Oh, yeah. And you got the merch to match.
Well, thankfully, that's one of the challenges of being a local regional professional MMA fighter is you haven't built up that reputation for anyone to be pushing you, to branding you, to help you with any of that. So you've got to do that all yourself. If you're lucky, you get a really good, catchy nickname from the other folks in the gym that you can build off of. And that, when someone else gives you a nickname based on your training, that's usually going to be pretty catchy. Nicknames that I got in the gym were more like the Tick, because I would close the distance, and once I got connected to you, you were going to have to fight like hell to get me disconnected to you.
Oh, right.
My default strategy was, well, I'm going to punch you until you let me get a hold of you, and then I'm going to punch you until you let me take you down, and then I'm going to punch you until you let me get to a dominant position, and then I'm going to punch you until you either give me a submission or the ref makes me stop punching you. It's just what I'm going to do. I'm just going to keep punishing and progressing until someone makes me stop.
Going through it sounded like strategy. I don't remember anything now because I just kept hearing punching. I always wondered, guys like you, like if you got to pick a fight, and I unfortunately have been in some fights as an adult, not a lot, because I don't like getting hit. But I will tell you this, guys like you are not the ones that a person should pick a fight. You guys, one, train to fight, and two, it seems like you're okay, not that you want to be, you're okay with getting punched in the face by another grown up who trains to fight. Like it seems like the wrong guy to mess with. So hear me out here. At some point, you have to say to yourself, why am I a brawler? Do you say that? Or at this point, it's just who you are?
I mean, so the thing is, I love the struggle. I love the being in the fire. I love the training. If I don't train for more than a week or two, it's like ultimately, that's one of the reasons that I'm still training. Because when I got into school, my mom had been like, hey, so, I know I have a friend of a friend who's associated and could probably get you recruited for the West Point wrestling team. And I was like, Mom, I've been wrestling a lot. I cut a lot of weight this year. I didn't actually cut a lot of weight, not in terms of what people would do. I considered that. And in a lot of ways, that turned out to be an advantage, performance advantage, because I wasn't as exhausted as the other guys. But I had cut more weight than I had up to that point. And I was just like, I'm tired and I don't need a scholarship. I can just focus on school. And this is going to be the hardest academics that I do. And I went to Beast Barracks and I was going through the process and I was like, I haven't grabbed anybody. like enforced my will on another person roughly my size against their will, and I miss it. I need to do it. I miss it. So I tried to walk on to the wrestling team at school, and they were like, if you're not a 4-time state champ, you're not a 4-time national champ, you're just not good enough to wrestle off against our recruits. It's like, that seems weird. That seems not correct. And then later that year in the brigade intramural championship, I wrestled one of their recruits and I pinned him. I was like, oh, this is more about preserving your recruiting budget than it is about actually having the best wrestlers on the team out there representing the school. That's great. Okay.
What? That's
awesome. But that's when I ended up getting pulled into the grappling side of things.
Yeah. So you guys, I always heard that you guys have to do like a mandatory sport while you're there. So you did, so the wrestling counted, or did you also start doing some of that other stuff, baseball, soccer, maybe some running?
So there are 2 intramural seasons. There's a fall intramural season and a spring intramural season. I got pulled into our company wrestling intramural. And then in the spring, they had combatives as a sport. So it's like, okay, cool. Army combative. Yes, I will do that. And I also was doing club activities on top of that. So the grappling and submission grappling club had been like, hey, man, you look like you've wrestled before. Yes, I have. Like, what do you think about potentially dangerous? I'm like, I think it's garbage. And I think people put themselves in compromising situations to avoid whatever pinning combination I'm trying to do. And they're like, well, what if I told you there's a sport where potentially dangerous is the whole point? And if you catch someone in one of those spots and they say, oh, it's too much for me, you just win. It's like, well, obviously, I'm going to sign up. Sign me up. Let me do that. So I did grappling and MMA club 3 nights a week. I did kendo club 2 nights a week.
Whoa.
And I was in the spirit band. And I was doing intramural sports.
Okay, so yeah, you were pretty busy. That sounds pretty awesome. Wait, you also said that earlier you mentioned you now are dabbling or are now skilled. At what point are you at with this guitar path?
I'm at the point where I just broke a string on my little traveler guitar for the second time, so I'm getting to restring that.
Yeah.
I've been playing guitar for about a year now, and I'm not as terrible as I used to be. So
you've got Stairway to Heaven already, I'm going to say?
I can do chords. Right now, the little app I'm learning off of has me practicing American Pie. I like to do Miseraloo is like my comfort song.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So we just have a couple minutes left here. And this has been amazing, by the way. So first, I just want to say thank you very much for coming on. This is exactly what we were looking for. And for our listeners, he took this short notice, which tells you the kind of guy that he is, because he was like, yeah, bro, let's do it. Now, he's a brawler, so there's probably nothing in life that he's afraid of. He's probably afraid of, like, okay, here's a question, Mr. Quigg. Do you have a pink or salmon or coral colored shirt?
My challenge, I've got a really ruddy complexion, so they just make me look pink in the face. Right. It doesn't look good on me.
That's fair. I'm just gonna see just where those limits are. Do you get stage fright? Like if there was some opportunities for a talent show at work and everyone had to perform, do you think that you would perform, and what would you do?
I mean, unfortunately, at one point in training, I got a knee to my mouth that split my lip open over top of my mouthpiece, which has really messed up my embouchure. So playing trumpet is not at the level it used to be. But I might do a reading. I might just get up and talk at the crowd a little bit.
Yeah.
If you can't tell, I'm not particularly shy. I'll
No,
get
doesn't
up,
seem that
maybe
way.
tell a few stories. I can always come back to what happened was.
Which that's always a crowd pleaser. At least for the listeners and followers of this podcast. All right, so I got a couple random that I will always offer. So what is your go-to karaoke song?
It's Uptown Funk. It is.
You gotta be kidding me.
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay, then you are not a shy guy if you're willing to perform that.
It used to be Fight for Your Right from the Beastie Boys, but then Uptown Funk came out. Because the thing about Fight for Your Right that's great is like they're singing badly on purpose. So you don't have to be good.
You don't.
But with Uptown Funk, I turned around. It was like I've made a whole choreographed dance number to this by myself that I do whenever it comes on. So I guess I have to sing this. And hey, Uptown gonna funk you up. Uptown funk you up.
Sounds like it. It sounds certainly like it. I'm going to agree with you either way. Man, I'm still worried about you getting on a flight. Let's see, it's Central Standard Time here. It's only 9:54 where I'm at. Hopefully there aren't. He's in Atlanta though, so there's probably flights all night. Man,
there's always flights out of Atlanta.
Honey, go lock the door. We'll try to keep him out. All right. What one other item that I'll always ask is who is a very interesting person in your social network that you would help me get on my next podcast?
I mean, there's so many options. I'd always love to hear you chat with my coach, Coach Sylvester Stevenson. He's incredible. My good friend, Matt Lyon. I mean, I suppose my question would be for this is, what do you want the focus of this podcast to be? Are you looking for sports? Are you looking for general interesting people?
Yes.
Okay. Then
yes, I do a sports talk show here in Austin, Texas. So I go down that path. I love pop culture. I intended to go over a few things here with you, but you took my breath away and you didn't have me in a rear naked choke to do it because, well, this is why we asked you to be on the freaking podcast. It was amazing. I mean, we knocked out an hour in like no time. And I know that sounds crazy, but yeah, I want it all because I do intend. I would love to have your coach. I'm a youth sports coach in my personal time. And I also would love to just kind of talk to a coach about what some of those activities, why these people do that. They rarely get rich doing this stuff, but they give so much of themselves. Your friend, if I get to a point that a person comes on and we get to some pop culture, we get to some entertainment, we get to some news, I would love to do that, but we'll see. I make no guarantees. I am very flexible. I want cool stuff. I want people that will send things out to their friends. I want their friends to want to listen to them. I'm hoping your friends would be like, you know what? I might have learned something today about that guy. I didn't know.
Yeah. So I brought up Matt Lyons because he is a broader healthcare researcher who's also a gig musician, guitarist, and is a huge nerd. I met him through Dragon Con. So pop culture, music, and then this is when I give you a context for the blend of meathead and intellectual that Matt Lyons is. Matt Lyons was working on a master's of social work when he decided to start wrestling at 25 at USC's wrestling club.
Jeez.
Which, knowing what you know about wrestling,
yeah,
the idea of someone being like, I think I'll just start this up at 25 with no prior experience.
Late in the game. Wow. Okay, yeah. That that I'm already intrigued. Already. So here's what I want to offer to you on our way out. This is the first ever. I'm gonna get a lot better. I've got some people that want to help me. I'll have some more bells and whistles. I want you to come back because I'll have more bells and whistles with you. And you and I did not. You just slipped there. But we'll just leave that as a little teaser for the next. We didn't even nerd out yet. And
I talked exactly zero about sci-fi fantasy or Dragon Con or tabletop role-playing games or board games.
That's a whole nother. We will get to that. You are coming back. Please, Mr. Brawler, just understand that's a request. I'm not actually threatening you to see in the Got the disclaimer out.
No. I 100% heard that. I am coming back, and that was a threat. Okay, cool. I got you.
Honey, call your cousin. I'm going to need more bodies in the house to throw at him while I run out the back door. What? I'm not going to stand and fight. What do I look like? I'm going to run. Oh, crap. He did do cross country. He didn't say he was a sprinter, though. If I get away fast enough, these are things I'm telling myself. Mr. Quigg, this was amazing. Thanks for coming on. Listeners, this is James Quigg. This gentleman, I didn't even get to read on the way in, but I'd like to on the way out. This gentleman has a professional record of 4-3 at Bantam Weight. He was all Armed Forces Invitational champion at 140 pounds. Team ROC, R-O-C, Fayetteville, North Carolina. His notable opponents, Kris Moutinho. For those who don't know, let me just tell you a little bit about Kris Moutinho. 30-year-old American MMA fighter from Milford, Mass. Professional fight record, 9 wins, 6 losses. He fights in a 135-pound weight class. 68-inch reach. His last fight was March of 2022 in UFC. He went viral after fighting Sean O'Malley on July 10th, 2021. So for those of you listening, yeah, you got to fight with your neighbor, Bob, with the fat gut. This dude, Kris Moutinho, like that's on his resume. Tony Gravely, let me just help them out again, Mr. Quigg. They may not know. Affiliation, his pro MMA record is 22-7. He's 5'5". Last weigh-in, he was 135.5. He's from VA, 2 up, 2 down. Okay. And he's an American mixed martial artist who competes in the bantamweight division. Professional since 2015, most notable for his time in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Again, this is not your neighbor. This is not the guy that cut you in your neighborhood supermarket. He's talking about real people. Notable teammates, Damon Blackshear, and he's got a black belt in BJJ under Mikey Pagano. Mr. Quigg.
So I do want to say reasons that I point out Damon. Damon is, one, a great teammate, a great person, but then 2, he's very much dedicated to the lifestyle, the training, and the fighting. Most recently, I believe it was in August, he had a fight in the UFC. He won that fight by submission in the first round. And then someone who was going to be fighting the former champion, Cody Garbrandt dropped out with injury. And Damon stepped in to take that fight, where that fight was going to be the Saturday after he had just fought. So he turned around and took another fight 7 days later. He fought on Saturday, made weight again, fought again, lost a really close decision. Damon is an incredible athlete, an incredible training partner. And if people don't know him, I highly recommend they go out there, they look him up, and watch Damon's career, because I think this kid's going places.
Yeah. This is going to be fun. So we're going to nerd out, but then we're also going to get a little more into the fight game. There's a lot that I'd like to talk to you about, get some opinions. And how about one day in the future, we live stream? I think you would be a great person to meet with my sports side, you and your knowledge of the game. Bro, let's do a live fight together. Let's talk about it.
Let's put it on the calendar. Because my ADHD self, if we don't put it on the calendar, it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna look at some fights. Let me look at some fights, especially, man, I don't know if Pullman's okay. Let me look at some fights and offer up because I want to be able to hold my own here with I don't want you to be like, yeah, Doug, he went for a reverse kick out Quiggeroni there, and I didn't know he could get it. And I'll be like, yep, he did. He surely did. You're right there. Good job, Bob. My name's James. Yep, you did that, James Bob.
Look, you have your expert commentary, you have your color commentary. The two work together.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. See this guy, he gets it. Man, Mr. Quig. You are awesome. Thank you, sir. This was a lot of fun. Talking with Donato. This was a talk with a gentleman brawler. We are everywhere you want to be. You'll be able to download. You can find us on all the socials. Is there a place, any socials that you'd like to offer, Mr. Quig, for those who may want to follow you after this?
So I have a fairly inactive Facebook page, the Gentleman Brawler. I have an Instagram. My Instagram handle is @GentlemanBrawler, and I'm on Twitter @GentlemanBrawler, but there's no E. It's just BRAWLR. I mostly post about on Twitter. I mostly post about tabletop role playing game stuff and commentaries on how managing our emotions interacts with other things. So if that's content you're interested in, you can catch me on Twitter too. I'll do a lot of retweeting of tabletop role playing game stuff though.
Ooh. And so on Twitter, it's @Gentleman Brawler with just an LR. It's the E is not in there for those.
I ran out of characters. Couldn't do the whole name.
Now, the awesome thing, for those who don't know, this would be a good follow for you guys. He said, him, I'm the biggest nerd in the locker room and the biggest jock in the game shop. Pretty awesome. Come on, that's a good follow. You guys got 208 followers already. So that's not just
a little guy. Oh, just a little guy.
Oh, it counts. It counts. Thank you again, Mr. Quig. We will see you next time. Thanks, everyone.